So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Public Interest Environmental Law Conference. My name is Edward Nunez. I'm a 1L PILC representative. I'll be moderating today's panel, Global Commerce and the Environmental Impact on South American Countries. Just a few announcements and then we'll go ahead and get started. And apologies for the sudden change in the link as well. So for whoever starts to join us, do apologize for that. So first off, please, for anyone who's joining in, by all means, feel free to mute yourself and go ahead and close or turn off your cameras. We will just be having the panelists showing their screens and their video. So if everyone can go ahead and just mute themselves and turn off their video, that would be much appreciated. Secondly, we will be using the chat feature to ask questions to the panelists. So if you have any questions throughout the course of the panel, please, by all means, feel free to post those in the chat. We will devote the last 15 to 10 minutes of the presentation to answering any questions. So if you have any questions as we proceed, by all means, feel free to add them to the chat. Additionally, if there are any legal professionals in the audience wanting to earn CLE credit for this panel, we will be dropping the link in the chat shortly, so that will be available and it'll have instructions. Also, our alumni board, Friends of Land, Air, Water, who help to provide stipends for students doing unpaid public interest environmental law internships. We're also going to be providing a link for that if you are interested in making a donation to help students with those stipends. Information and do all of that will be in the link as well. Lastly, the University of Oregon is located on Kalapuya Aliki, the traditional indigenous homeland of the Kalapuya people. So following treaties between 1851 and 1855, the Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the coastal reservation in Western Oregon. Today, descendants are citizens of the Confederate tribes of the Grand Ronde community of Oregon and the Confederate tribes as the Siletz Indians of Oregon. And they continue to make important contributions to their community, to the University of Oregon, and across the land that we now refer to as Oregon. PILC would like to acknowledge the traditional homelands of the Kalapuya people in the Willamette Valley and express our respect for the tribal nations of Oregon. So now I would like to introduce our panelists. First, we have Raquel Burson. She's a senior attorney of the Latin America and Caribbean legal team at the Nature Conservancy in Arlington, Virginia. Raquel is licensed in New York State and Brazil as an attorney with more than 9 years of experience providing legal services to clients with operations in Latin America. As a native of the Amazon region in Brazil, she is a passionate advocate for the environment. She's a native speaker of Portuguese, and she's fluent in both English and Spanish. At the Nature Conservancy, Raquel provides legal services on complex matters for Latin America and Caribbean programs to advance the Conservancy's priorities and appropriately manage the risks. Before joining, she worked as an attorney for a leading global immigration law firm. Raquel holds a Master of Law degree in Environmental Energy and International Arbitration from the University of Texas School of Law, and a Bachelor of Laws degree from Universidad de Estados de Amazonia in Brazil. As part of her bachelor's degree, Raquel met indigenous communities in the Amazon region, research and analyze complex legal measures to protect traditional knowledge and sustainable use of biodiversity. We also have Josie Sales, who's the Global Architecture Project Manager at the Nature Conservancy. She's based in Rio de Janeiro. Josie's got 20 years of experience in Latin America, ranging from private sector operations to managing large environmental nonprofit projects. Before joining the Nature Conservancy, she was responsible for managing Sony Music Entertainment's multi-billion-dollar operations budget for Brazil. Under the Nature Conservancy's global priority to provide food and water sustainability, she oversees a multidisciplinary team based in Brazil, Argentina, the United States, and London. She provides strategic oversight of the Nature Conservancy's flagship project to eliminate deforestation in South America, the Conservation Markets Initiative. Working across global market drivers, this project galvanizes corporate action in developing and implementing deforestation-free commitments for beef and soy in the Brazilian Amazon and Cerrado, as well in the Gran Sanco region in Argentina and Paraguay. The project also aims to improve decision-making tools, enhance transparency, unlock financial incentives, and influence international trade policies. Josie is a native Portuguese speaker, and she is also fluent in English and Spanish. Josie holds a master's degree in environmental strategy with a focus on stakeholder relationships from el Instituto Brasil de Mercado de Capitales, and a Master of Business Administration degree, also from Brazil. So I will now turn everything over to Josie and Raquel. Looking forward to the presentation and I'm very thankful to have you both.
Thank you, Edward. Well, I think you have said plenty about us. I will just say a little bit more about TNC, since both Josie and I work for the Nature Conservancy. The Nature Conservancy is a global environmental organization headquartered in Arlington, Virginia, United States. It has operations in 79 countries, as well as across every state in the United States. With that said, I don't want to say anything else about us. I just want to introduce our agenda. This is our agenda today. We'll be speaking today about the global commodity trade dynamic and its impact to deforestation. After a very interesting conservation presentation by my friend Josie, we will address legal considerations, the most common type of agreements in the money out phase of the project. That's where I work more closely with my clients. We help them to spend the money and make the magic happen in Latin America. And the role of the in-house counsel at a nonprofit organization. We're more than happy to address questions that you have at the end of the presentation. You can just add your questions to the chat. Edward will be monitoring, or you can also send us an email. Our contact information will be at the end of the presentation, the very final slide. That being said, I will let Josie start our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks, Edward, for the warming welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here talking more about these commodities world to all of you. I'd like to start my presentation with this combination of keywords here: trees, agriculture, population growth, climate, and business. Although seems very different things at a first glance, they are centered and connected through the global commodity supply chain. So in the next slides, I will present to all of you a bit of some of those challenges and connection among all of that. So the picture, this beautiful picture that you are seeing here is an aerial view of São Félix do Xingu. It's a municipality in the heart of the Brazilian Amazon, which is an area very impacted by the deforestation caused by the commodity supply chain, especially in beef in that case. So the reason why I chose this picture is really to illustrate why tropical forests matter so much to the world. So tropical forests harbor some of the world's highest biodiversity and carbon stocks, making them really essential for conservation and the mitigation of climate risk. So the same landscapes are often home to diverse cultures and peoples who have inhabited and used the forest for generations. So this is why it's so important that. Now, I want to show you some data so you can better understand the challenges in the commodities dynamics. So first of all, tropical forest loss remains a high rates, and several factors drive forest loss, including agriculture, forestry, wildfire, and urbanization. But agriculture expansion is the dominant direct cause of the deforestation in the tropics. There are many trade-offs with the agriculture supply chain, particularly in South America. So I'll just present a few of those. So from one side, from the positive side, agriculture commodity is really an important driver of exports and employment. In South America, it represents 15% of total employment. As a reference for you, the OECD countries has an average of 4.9%. So it's very significant, the employment for the South America countries. Also in South America, Brazil has a leading role, being the major export of soy and beef in the world, and it's highly dependent on the foreign soybean market. So in the demand side, China is really a protagonist of that, being the major importer of soy and beef in the world. So as you can see, the dynamic between these two countries are very relevant from an economic standpoint for the country, but there is also, of course, the other side of the coin, which is the negative impact for the biodiversity. Although soy and beef are the main drivers of the deforestation in South America, I want you to know that there are other forest risks commodities such as cocoa, coffee, wood fiber, and palm oil, especially very notable in Indonesia, the deforestation. So in 20 years, more than 60 million of hectares of primary forests have been lost. So to give you a more concrete representation of what this means, you can think of the size of France. So this is how much we already lost over the past 20 years. Although I mentioned about Brazil, I also want you to know that 3 major biomes in South America have a large scale commercial agriculture production systems that is very integrated to the global commodities market. Amazon Cerrado in Brazil, as I mentioned, but also Gran Chaco in Argentina and Paraguay. So those are the main players in South America for commodities. Next slide, Rachel, please. Thanks. While the current tropical deforestation situation is really concerning, the future trends are really uncertain. So one major driver of this uncertainty is the fact that the global population is rising. So it's estimated that 1.8 billion of people could join the middle class by 2030. So the effect of that is in the direct shifts through increases in protein consumption may happen with rise incomes. So an important factor is on that increase is that this increase in middle population is estimated to happen in Asia, particularly in Asia. So this means that the demand for forest risk commodities, especially beef and soy, can increase to attend the world foods consumption. So, and this, of course, can lead to more deforestation if we continue with the business as usual model. So doing a zooming in the soy, we can say that in the past 10 years, the demand for soybeans grew by 101%, 2 times more the growth of the overall agriculture sector, and 4 times the growth of the overall population. So this is really a lot. And the growth of the soybean has been underpinned by its critical importance as a source of protein for animal feed. So 70% of the harvest soy is processed into soy meal, and almost 100% of this soy meal is used for animal feed. So beef, poultry, pork. So the soy is really relevant to as a commodity to the world. So based on these historical trends, you can imagine that the future can be worse if nothing changes, right? Next slide, Rachel. Thanks. Now, a positive message that I wanted to leave to you is that it is possible to reach agriculture growth, develop and attend to the world food consumption of both soy and beef commodities that is deforestation free. So conservation and production are not really at odds with each other. So a better normal is possible really. So a lot of our NGOs allies beat the drum on no deforestation. Although for TNC, this is really our objective, TNC has a more pragmatic narrative to the market actors, which is more propositive, which means that we use more science to show companies that there is more than double the area of suitable lands that have already been cleaned in the forest to meet future demands through regenerative agriculture, intensification of the yields. So agribusiness can continue really grow strategically by strategically expanding into those areas that were already deforested, was already cleared. So this is really a perfect example of a win-win to both sides. Also, we don't tell to the banks that they needed to convert all their financial products to have green conditions. What we tell them is that there is a growing opportunity for new products that support these increased market demands for conservation-free production. And we definitely don't tell the Chinese government that they need to ban imports with deforestation. What we do instead is to use the Chinese think tankers to do research and influence policymakers on the importance of guaranteeing long-term food access to feed 1.4 billion people that will join the middle class by ensuring that the productivity from those producing countries are not affected by climate change caused by deforestation. So this is our narrative to the market actors to show the importance or the benefits of the deforestation free to the market. And of course, finally, I wanted to say that the European and other key demand countries also have an important role in that space, advancing with regulation, boundary trade action to ban the imported deforestation products. Next slide, thanks. Now I'll talk about a little bit about risks of the deforestation, the supply chains. And this is where usually the attorneys, perhaps one of you in the future, comes to help the sustainability and the commercial areas in the companies to figure out and to discuss about all of those risks when they are involved in the commodities. So the material risk of deforestation in supply chain changes the assumptions related to companies' revenues growth drivers, operational costs, profitability, litigation risks, and cash flow generation. So for example, local changes in climate may reduce agricultural yields, in turn reducing companies' profits. A company's brand reputation may be negatively affected by being directly or indirectly associated with deforestation and exploitation of local people's rights, and even through their supplies, not necessarily they directly involved. So those risks have the potential to cause higher operation costs to the company, lower margins, price volatility for investing companies. So among many other operational risks. So now connecting the deforestation with climate change, one important thing for you to know is that the forests in the tropicals has a unique role as they are rich to store carbon. So addressing deforestation driven by agricultural commodities is really critical to achieve the transition to a low carbon economy and meeting the international ambition to prevent the warming beyond the 1.5 degrees Celsius to 2 degrees Celsius. Often cited as the uppermost limits that our planet can handle. So forest degradation accounts for approximately 10 to 15% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. So it's not the whole thing, but it contributes to a part of that emission. So when a forest is cleared, we are not only knocking our best ally, capturing the staggering amount of GHGs, but also we are creating emissions by cutting down the trees. So we have the two sides. In 2017, TNC led a very interesting study and found that the land sector has the potential to deliver up to 1/3 of the cost-effective mitigation needed by 2030 to hold the global warming below the 2 degrees Celsius. So this mitigation strategy was called by TNC as natural climate solutions. So avoided forest conversion is one of those viable natural climate solutions. So deforestation is really, deforestation-free is really important on that context of the climate change risk as well. Next slide, thanks. Now I'll talk a bit about the role of retailers and brands in this commodity dynamic. So probably you already heard about a retailer or a brand like Nestle and many others announcing their commitments on zero deforestation. But they are brands and retailers who buy from someone, right? Who buy from their suppliers. So for them to implement those commitments, they need their suppliers to act, to also implement some type of zero conversion commitments and act on that. So in that regard, we are seeing really increasing pressure from retailers and brands in the world on their midstream suppliers. So in case of the soy and beef, we are talking about the grain traders, companies and the meat packers to deliver zero conversion soy and beef. However, the timetables for implementation of deforestation and conversion-free commitments are really not aggressive enough given the speed of habitat conversion that is happening in Brazilian Cerrado and Argentinian Chaco. So, and there are three main reasons behind of that, why they are slowing, why they are delaying to the implementation of their commitments. The first message that I wanted to leave with you is the importance of China in changing the rules of the game. As we have seen in previous slides, China is the #1 importer of the soy and beef in the world. So dominance in the world trade means China can set de facto standards. If China sends a demand sign that they desire only zero deforestation soy and beef, they can really have a huge shift, a huge role in shifting the global market. So a China demand signal can generate very quick and significant conservation outcomes. But the reality is that today China have little to no environment requirements on their imports. So the traders and meat packers really are sitting comfortably, knowing that their major market is currently satisfied with the business as usual, right? With products with deforestation. The second point is the commercial imperative to shift the models to deforestation conversion free are not compelling enough. So this gap really provides ample cover for companies to delay their effective implementation on DCF commitments. And finally, the soy traders and meat packers justify their slowness to change the business as usual model with the low margin of the commodity. So those are the reasons why they are, delaying, postponing that. Next slide, thanks. Now, this circle represents a simplification version of the pool of stakeholders involved in the commodity supply chain dynamic. So here we have NGOs, we have the finance sector, we have the traders, we have the meat packers, we have the producers, producer country, demand sides, among many other players. So this circle wants to say that the outlook of forest positive solutions for a deforestation-free commodity supply chain can only be achieved through collective action and collaboration across geographies, sectors, stakeholders, both within and beyond the supply chains. Over the past decade, particularly in recent years, the community of action has recognized and has found new ways of working together. So in the private sector, for instance, companies are joining forces through sector-specific efforts, such as platforms as the Consumer Good Forum, Soft Commodities Forums, among many other platforms that exist, to agree on a collective target and engage more deeply with other stakeholders. In producing countries, emerging multi-stakeholder initiatives that engage local governments and produces at landscape scale have started to show promises. And we do have a case in St. Felix do Xingu that TNC is working that demonstrates that, this beginning. The finance sector also has begun to recognize the role they play in decreasing in finance of commodity production linked to deforestation and increase the flow of capital towards sustainable commodity production. And the civil society as well also played an important role in enhancing transparency, providing tools and accountability. And we also have other NGOs allies who are more towards to advocacy campaigns that also plays a role in the society and on that. However, these efforts are still nascent and there is a significant opportunity to build on this momentum and increase pre-competitive collaboration. So this diagram, we believe that will create really a system change in the global commodity dynamic in the upcoming years if this moves forward more examples. Next slide. Thanks, Rachel. Now, a good example that I want to bring it to you about the mobilization between civil society, private sector, and demanding country that delivered a lasting solution to deforestation attributed to soy in the Amazon is what we call the Amazon Soy Moratorium. To explain a bit the context, historically, deforestation for soy was hovering around 120,000 hectares a year until 2005, with significant concerns that it was going to increase even more with increased global demands and high soybean prices. So in 2006, when the Amazon Soy Moratorium was created, we saw a huge decrease of nearly 70% in deforestation for soy and continued decrease in maintaining minimal levels of deforestation for soy. So in this graphic here, you see this big drop when the soy moratorium came. So this is a key message that I want to share with you: the power of a voluntary market agreement for the commodities world. What this graph doesn't show is that market agreements are effective despite of powerful externalities. From 2007 to 2012, global soybean prices were booming. Global growth in population and income, increasing biofuel production, and depreciation of the US dollar, any farmer anywhere in the world had a significant financial incentive to plant as much soybean as possible wherever he possibly could. Also, this graphic also doesn't show that these markets agreements don't happen overnight. So it was really a 5 years process that took until the soy moratorium place, that started with conversations between TNC and Cargill, a major soybean company, when they opened a grain terminal to ship soy down from the Amazon River. And this culminated with a Greenpeace campaign in Europe against soy traders, and McDonald's chicken nuggets feed on soy from the Amazon. So this was a huge movement that happened by that time. With that, the soy moratorium was created. So also there was a big improvement in the command control against illegal deforestation in the country by the Brazilian government as well. But the soy moratorium still have gaps. we acknowledge that as the deforestation in Amazon are still high, although they maintain like somehow flat, but are still high, but they dramatically change, as we saw in this graphic, due to these voluntary agreements. And what we expect to see at some point is that other voluntary market agreements happens also for the Cerrado and Chaco, in the Gran Chaco as well. Next slide, thanks. Now, talking more specifically about TNC's focus on the zero conversion commodity strategy, there are a lot of different non-profit organizations working this space as well, and TNC has a long history of working with agriculture and food companies and producers to make their supply chains more sustainable. But it wasn't until 2014, with the launch of New York Declaration on Forests, that this really started to be a more comprehensive strategy at TNC to combat tropical deforestation by working more broadly and systemically with market actors to help them implement their corporate commitments to zero deforestation. At TNC's zero conversion commodity strategy, we focus on 4 main things. First, in engaging directly with companies and their industry groups to credibly implement their deforestation-free commitments. Also, having the data and platforms available so companies can make smart decisions in their sourcing based on that information. Also, increase volume variety in terms of producers' incentives and green loans and investments. And finally, some targeted policy work, particularly in China, with the work with the think tanks and Chinese universities on research and science data. So those areas are underpinned by our foundational work at TNC, which is refining guidance for sectors to have clear rules and expectations, boots on the ground projects in key geographies that sustain our credibility in global forums and test innovative elements and influence industry leaders through target communication piece. TNC also has other complementary strategies that work on deforestation and conversion fronts, like small-scale family farming and indigenous community. But I just highlighted the specifically work of the strategy that I work for, which is the zero conversion commodity strategy. Next slide. Yeah. So I think I'll close a better normal is really possible, and I want to close my part of the presentation saying yes, this is possible, and there are reasons to believe the COP26 can be a turning point for us. So the COP, the Conference of Parties, is a major annual global event where member countries of the United Nations Climate Change Convention come together to debate and make decisions on the rules of the game for keeping global warming to under 2 degrees Celsius. So between October and November of last year was held the COP26 in Glasgow. And for the first time ever in the history of the climate COPs, nature took front stage as an important contributor in the equation, keep the world under the 2 degrees of global warming. So also it was the first time that the deforestation narrative was more explicitly embedded into the climate change risks. So this is always very positive. So several pledges, commitments were made by countries, by the finance sector, by the soy and beef supply chain, by brands. I mean, several commitments were made. But one that I would like to highlight is the ambitious 19 billion of public and private commitments to halt and revert deforestation by 2030. That was made with the signature of more than 140 countries, including China and Brazil, which is very important, relevant to have China signing this type of agreement. So this is a huge and a very important step towards to that. Of course, the society will be watching, the civil societies, of course, will be also following up very close how those pledges and commitments will be deployed over the years to become a reality. And I think the next COP in November of this year, there will be more pressure to see some advances from the society that the markets or all those actors did in the past COP. So thank you. Now I'll turn to my colleague Rachel to continue the presentation. Thank you again.
Thank you, Josie. Now I'll try my best to keep the legal side of the presentation as interesting as the conservation topic. As you can imagine, if you're representing a corporation with operations in many countries, in my case, TNEC has operations in more than 78, the legal department has the challenge to ensure compliance with domestic and international laws. Policies and procedures help the workplace to run more efficiently, ensure consistency, fairness, but it also helps us to ensure compliance across the organization. Employees may not be aware of all the laws, but if the organization has a standard operating procedures in place, working as a checks and balance, staff will quickly learn these procedures so they can implement their projects in compliance and avoid audit finding. As an attorney supporting our business units in Latin America and the Caribbean, I am constantly explaining the importance of the Section 501c3 of the US Internal Revenue Code. For our organization to do the conservation work that we do, we rely on donations, and our goal is to spend every dollar that we get to protect the lands and waters on which all life depends. That's TNC's mission. It is ambitious. It impacts people and nature globally. Maintaining our tax-exempt status is crucial to scale up our conservation impact. Some countries do not offer similar tax-exempt status as the United States, and organizations must pay taxes. Therefore, it is another incentive to be careful in maintaining our US status, exempt status, so the global programs can benefit as well. The exempt purposes set forth in Section 501c3 are related to public interest, such as charitable, like TNC, religious, educational, scientific, preventing cruelty to children or animals. It is set forth in the Section 501c3. I would like it to read the first paragraph. It has very good information. It says that to be tax exempt under this section, an organization must be organized and operated exclusively for exempt purposes, and none of its earnings may inure to any private shareholder or individual. Well, in my case, from the scope of the project to contract review, I keep this in mind. Are we operating exclusively for our exempt purposes? Is there a private benefit involved? Why? Again, because nonprofits by law are mission driven. So it is very important to keep our mission as priority. For example, as you saw for Josie's presentation, we work with small farmers, we work with fishermen, we work with indigenous communities. Our conservation work improves economic livelihoods, and that is a private benefit to these individuals. But the conservation impact that will result, avoiding deforestation, promoting reforestation, avoiding water pollution and loss of biodiversity, substantially outweigh to this private benefit. And that's the key eye as an attorney that you must have when we're drafting those contracts. We want to make sure that the conservation we justify in the contract that the conservation benefits substantially outweigh any private benefit involved in that contract. Let's read the rest of this paragraph. In addition, it may not be an action organization. For example, it may not attempt to influence legislation as a substantial part of its activities. Well, we all know how it is extremely important to educate our legislators about conservation, to implement public policies and laws that can help to advance our mission. In practice, that means if I spot in a contract that our staff might be attempted to influence legislation, we need to track our time. We track our time to report to the IRS. And by board resolution, our goal is not to spend more than 2% of our time, so it doesn't become a substantial part of our activities. And finally, it may not participate in any campaign activity for or against political candidates. Well, we all have seen how elections globally have become very polarized. It is an election year in Brazil this year. And I don't know if you have been following politics in Brazil. It's even more interesting that TV show House of Cards. You know, polarization has been increasing. People have strong emotions about it. So as an attorney for the organization, what do? We intensify trainings. We're constantly training staff to be careful, to be diligent. We all need to be diligent, not to participate in any campaign activity for or against political candidates that may reflect negatively to the organization and impact our tax exempt status. Some important legal considerations, that's listed most common that I've seen recently. Corporate engagement. A nonprofit organization must carefully manage risks associated with NGO's relationship with for-profit entities. We all know that we want to win with the for-profit sector, and we would like to leverage the strength of the private sector to advance the mission. So it is important that the organization has a corporate engagement policy and keep the principles of the corporate engagement policy when negotiating agreements or deciding the scope of the project, to keep the mission first. Avoid undue private benefit or reputational risks. Confidentiality is very important. For example, Josie, before even we have a contract, she might have to negotiate projects and contracts with different companies, and she might have to disclose confidential information even before we, in the phase of negotiation, even before we have a written agreement in place. So we advise clients, that would be a good time to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And once you have a contract signed, of course, we have a confidentiality clause that will bind the parties to keep the confidential information secure. Intellectual property, IP and licensing. Well, to be honest with you, this is a class that I did not take in law school, and I regret. As our projects are becoming more and more sophisticated, we are constantly analyzing threats to the stability of copyrights, trademarks, patents, and other areas of intellectual property protection. From the perspective of a money-hour attorney, I'm constantly analyzing the balance between the interests and needs of creators, the public, and our donors' terms and conditions. For example, let's just say we want to create a website for water fund, and it is our term loan goal to transfer that website to a local government. While we're creating that website, we may work with for-profit companies for their expertise as consultant. During this phase, it is our best interest to keep 100% of intellectual property over that product, over that website. Once we transfer to a local government entity to start implementing the water fund in that particular country, then it shifts. We want to transfer 100% of that intellectual property to that local government agency. They will maintain the website. They will be responsible for updating. They will be responsible for the costs. So it's also, we need to be careful who is financing this creation. What are the donors' terms and conditions? Some donors, they like to keep the intellectual property to themselves. Some donors, they like to make the intellectual property public. So I just needed to be very careful also that we're following donors' terms and conditions to be able to achieve that goal, to be able to, for that project to be successful. Anti-corruption compliance is something very important. And if you're aware, the United States has a US law called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, the FCPA, with international ramifications. This law prohibits US firms and individuals from paying bribes to foreign government officials to further business deals. It's something very important, and it's very often cited and considered in grant making. And of course, once you are dealing with other countries, that's the part that your legal skills as attorneys, and if you have a knowledge, if you speak a foreign language, it's so helpful to support their organization in global operations. And you must dive in, and often with the assistance of counsel. So let's just say an example, privacy. When the European privacy laws, when the GDPR became effective, anyone that had business with the UK, we had to educate ourselves and understand how it would be in compliance. Now the hot topic is the Brazilian privacy law, the LGPD. After 2 years of vacation legis, it became effective. It has very expensive fines. So everybody now, is trying to understand exactly what we need to do to be in compliance and how the government will audit companies. So that requires us to change contract clauses, forms, procedures, websites, make sure that if we're gathering personal information, that we have consent of the owner and we have procedures in place for that. It's all about risk management. And here's some of the 3 most common contracts that I've seen when we're spending money. Ironically, I want to start with the memorandum of understanding, which in our case, we do not actually spend money. But it's common. So I just want to make sure that I make this distinction here. A memorandum of understanding is an agreement between 2 or more parties to formalize their intent of a common line of action. Is it binding? That's the first question if you work with global operation that you should ask, because in the US, we can make an agreement not binding, but in some countries it is binding. So in this case, when we work with a memorandum of understanding and we classify a memorandum of understanding, we don't make it binding. And in this case, we're very careful to have it written where there is no consideration involved, there is no transfer of resources. And when I say no transfer of resources, I mean no transfer of money, no transfer of intellectual property, no transfer of equipment. So we have the 2 parties that agree to work together. We have objectives, but each one will use their own resources. If in the future they have a work plan, they may share resources, then we can negotiate and sign subsequent agreements. And that's not going to be called memorandum of understanding. Here's an example of a memorandum of understanding on the conservation of migratory sharks. It's very clear. It says it's legally non-binding. It is an international instrument. It has 5 main objectives. It has been signed by 48 states, the European Union, and 14 cooperating partners. In this case, there is no transfer of resources. What the signatories did here, they have committed politically to its implementation, to implement those 5 main objectives, but there is no transfer of resources involved in this memorandum of understanding. Contract for services is something that we used with for-profit companies when we're spending money, because we also need services, right? Who benefits? The NGO. The NGO hires services to the NGO's own benefit and use to advance its projects, to advance its mission. Here, it's our best interest to keep 100% of intellectual property, and payments are tied to deliverables. On the other hand, we also may sign grant agreements to support other NGOs. You know, in the real world, the words agreement, contract, or grant are often used interchangeably. For the purpose of this presentation, we use the term grant as an agreement where an NGO disburses private or public funds to support its mission, and the recipient is not required to provide equivalent value in return. So in this case, what I do is, first, to identify if it is an eligible grantee, a permitted grantee per our standard operating procedures. If it is an NGO, you know, we join forces, we help other organizations, we help our partners to advance our mission. If we share conservation values and it helps to advance our mission, we support partners. So, and when we work with partners in different countries, we do an analysis if that organization is an equivalent to an NGO. So we review corporate documentation, tax documentation. We do this legal analysis as well. So who benefits? What's the goal? The goal is to advance the mission. Since the partner has its mission and we share values, we shifted the mindset here. It's in the best interest of the partner to keep it their IP, 100% of intellectual property. And we're not talking about deliverables here. We're talking about compliance. So our main involvement our primary involvement is to monitor compliance with the grant conditions to ensure the funds are spent for the purpose intended. Just two quick examples. NGO wants to give funds to a conservation nonprofit organization in Argentina to educate farmers on sustainable grazing practices. Would this be a contract for services or a grant? If educating farmers on sustainable grazing practices fits within the partner's mission, remember every nonprofit must have a clear mission statement, then this would likely be considered as a grant because NGO is providing then funds to further their own mission. If educating farmers on sustainable grazing practices does not fit within their mission, this might be a contract for services. It is very different from this example. Here it's clear that it's a contract for services. We're paying a for-profit company to create products for the NGO's own use and benefit. Why is this important? So how can you decide whether it's a contract for services or a grant? So you have to make a multi-factor analysis. The content of the project, objectives of the agreement, and motivations of the other party are relevant. And misclassification of agreements, it may trigger an internal audit finding. Who is the client? Just want to briefly emphasize this because if you work for an organization like TNC, where employees work here for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, now imagine we have employees that work here for 20 years, attorneys that work here for 25 years. It's possible that we become very close, right? We work closely, we become very close. In this example, just want to point it out, our ethical duty to the organization. In this example, Jack is the director of the organization's business unit in Mexico. He has worked for the organization for more than 10 years. He works closely with their attorney for research, analysis, and often personal and asks for personal and business advice. He calls you his attorney. He prefers to work with you. You are the only one who speaks Spanish. And then one day he gets a call or an invitation from the ethics and compliance department because they received a complaint. And then Jack is really concerned and he wants you to go to this meeting to represent him. After all, you are his attorney. What should you do? So again, we have as attorneys an ethical duty to the organization. So we should remind staff that you represent the organization. In this case, you are not his personal attorney. We're not Jack's personal attorney. If he is very concerned about this meeting and possible ramifications, he should seek outside counsel for representation. Another important consideration, if the lawyer knows that an officer or an employee intends to act, is engaged in action, intends to act or refuses to act in a matter that might be a violation or reasonably being put into the organization of a violation of law that is likely to result in substantial injury to the organization, then the lawyer shall proceed as is reasonably necessary in the best interest of the organization. So we shall report if we know that an employee has acted in violation of law that may be reasonably imputed to the organization, and it might be substantial, it may result in a substantial injury to the organization. We shall report. We shall report to the Ethics and Compliance Department, or if they don't make the appropriate measures, we escalate to higher authority. I just want to close my presentation with this picture. I know that Josie explained how China is a key player, but I also think Latin America is a key player. Despite contributing less than 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions, Latin American countries are already experiencing the impact of climate change, severe droughts, floods impacting economic activity. Thousands of people are being pushed into extreme poverty. And the region is so rich in biodiversity. The region has become a green lab for innovation. And our biodiversity, the biodiversity in Latin America is now key to meeting global climate goals. And this picture is my son. And when I look at this picture, I remind myself why we do this work, not only for our survival, but hopefully that our generations, the future generations to come, can enjoy. You see how happy he is to enjoy nature. He understands already how important it is for our survival. When we read books about environment, here is already very sad, how sad sounds and concern. So just want to make sure that I want to thank you for the opportunity today, and I want to thank you for your hard work. I want you, students of law, to join the fight and keep working passionately to conserve beautiful places like this one for our future generations. Thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully next year we'll be there in person, because I heard Eugene has a vibrant and passionate community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raquel and Josie, for your presentation. It is much appreciated. At this time, we will go ahead and open everything up to questions if any people have questions. If not, do have a couple questions right now that I would like to follow up with the panelists. The first being, what pressure can we exert on brands, retailers, and midstream suppliers to kind of assist with the efforts to reduce deforestation? Particularly, I know you were mentioning, Raquel, that there is a limit to how much NGOs can be involved in political work. And so I'm just kind of curious, what kind of advice would you counsel for attorneys, consumers, and other people who are interested in kind of like, contributing to the fight against deforestation?
Well, I would say work closely with staff. Staff will be focused on, I would say, making the beautiful work that they do, the conservation work that they do the magic work. As an attorney, we are here to, of course, defend, protect the organization, legally speaking, minimize risks, but we also don't want to be on their way, right? We want to make sure that they have the tools that they need, that they understand the risks associated, and we don't want to be on their way. And there is often a frustration between what they want to do and what we tell them that they can't do. But right now, as you can see from other presentations and from the reports that we're reading based on science, we all need to be, we all have to have a more appetite for risks. Unfortunately, we don't have much time anymore. We're running out of time. We have very ambitious goals that we need to complete by 2030. And even us, the legal department, even us as attorney that support the staff in this work, we all needed to be a little more comfortable to taking risks, because that is this critical urgency to make it happen, to scale up the projects, to work in scale, to make a difference. The positive side, the positive information that I heard so far is that we know what to do. There is money, plenty of money available for us to make it happen. We need to make it happen now. We needed to come together globally and make it happen.
Thank you so much, Dr. I will go ahead and pass things along to my colleague, Jack. I have to go attend another panel real quickly and moderate that. But again, thank you so much, Josie, Raquel, for everything you contribute to. If anybody else have other questions, Jack will stay to make sure that the panel keeps going for a little while longer. Thank you so much for attending, y'all. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Hi, everybody. So do we have any other questions?